Welcome to Uncanny X-Minutes, where we bring you the comics behind the movies. I'm Stasia.
I'm producer James.
And we're watching X-Men The Last Stand, minutes 30 through 40.
That is right.
And today, James, what are we doing? It's a very special episode.
It's an exciting episode is what happens. We have Angel escaping his father's lab instead of being cured, Magneto breaking out a bunch of mutants from a prison convoy, and Jean making out with Wolverine.
All very interesting, but not what we're talking about today.
Well, partially. So Magneto breaks a bunch of mutants out of the prison convoy. And who is one of the prisoners?
Multiple Man.
Multiple Man. I think they call him James Madrox.
Of course they do.
And
Jamie, though.
But it's Jamie. And as somebody who was called Jamie as a kid, I wish I would have read more X Factor. I may have kept going by Jamie.
It would have been a great name.
Jamie's great. I mean, Jamie Madrox is great.
That's true.
I'm not a Jamie anymore.
Not everybody thinks that about him, but I do. I'm a fan.
It's funny. I am in the camp of I only knew him from this. I knew of him.
Okay.
But didn't read a ton of him. And then he's in the movie. I'm like, oh, I know that's Multiple Man. There he is. Clear as day.
His powers are very distinctive.
Yes. And that's why you use him.
Right.
But his personality, his opinions, his powers, his journey, much more interesting than they could ever put in this. Let's be honest.
That's true.
I just doing the research for this, I am now a big fan.
Yay. I'm so glad.
I had read one of the stories I'll talk about later is the only real deep dive I've had about him. But that's what I love about X-Men comics is reading big events or reading runs of things and just random mutants coming in that you knew about but didn't know.
Yeah.
It's I know who you are, I know what you can do, and that's as far as it goes because there's no time. So when they get a highlight, I'm always excited because I'm like, ooh, tell me more.
There's one character that I did not read a ton of, but was rereading this, and this is my exposure to her, which is Monet. Mm-hmm. And I've become such a huge fan of her, very similarly. But I was a fan coming in of Multiple Man. So here's what we're going to do, James. You start us off. Give me a little bibliography. I'll chime in if I feel like there's something that you're missing. Tell me who is Jamie Madrox? Who is Multiple Man?
Well, he's a guy who can multiply.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Do you want to know how?
So I do know how.
Yeah.
So the way he multiplies, which I did not know, is that he takes kinetic energy and uses that to multiply.
Yes.
So he has to be hit or he has to hit something.
Right.
If you watch this movie, that's not the case.
No, not
just
in this
a bunch
movie.
of him walk out.
Yeah.
But it's funny. The Wikipedia does say it seems like there are instances where that is the case. I read it as some writers have forgot that's a thing.
Yeah.
I bet you after this movie, when it's not, Peter David.
Yeah.
Writing Multiple Man.
Yeah.
Somebody forgot that was a thing.
It's also kind of subtle because he can stomp on the ground and with his foot and then
But that's the thing, though. I have read a storyline with him in it. I reread it. And there were panels of him stomping his foot. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Way over my head. Did not realize that was a thing. Once you know, you can't not see it.
Yeah.
There's an episode of the animated series and Wolverine and the X-Men where the X-Men are fighting him for different reasons. But each time he hits his fist in his own hand. He says, hit me. There is an impetus for him to turn into multiples.
Yeah.
Never knew that was a thing.
That's great.
So I'm so glad that it got pointed out. Now, the more interesting part of him, which I don't know when this started, but when he makes a dupe, which is one of his multiples, it is some part of him, some part of his personality. So, the dupes aren't exact duplicates. They are different versions of the same man. So, when you're reading some of the later X Factor run, he'll, duplicate himself and then ask him a question to see what kind of person he has.
Okay, so that comes during, I think, right before the second Peter David run where Multiple Man is running X Factor. Mm-hmm. There is a big thing where Professor Xavier forcibly takes over. This is so Xavier.
Oh, no.
Forcibly takes over Jamie Madrox's mind to compel him to fight. I think it was one of the X numbers, 12, 13. I cannot remember exactly which one.
Sure.
But he uses him and he forces him to multiply like a ton.
Okay.
And from that point on, after he like finally absorbs everything back, his powers get weird. Like,
but it's awesome.
That's the inciting incident.
Okay.
But yes, it is very cool because it changes from this very kind of goofy background character from X-Men to somebody who's very complicated.
Very complicated. And as you tell his stories, the complications are there. Like, it's not just, it's a thing that people forget happens. It is front and center.
One of my favorite lines from one of the Peter David issues is Multiple Man. He makes the Hulk look like a mental health poster boy. It's iconic line. I love it.
That's amazing.
It's so funny because it's completely true.
Amazing. So his dupes can also dupe?
Yes.
So it's not just the Jamie Prime or Madrox Prime that can do it. The duplicates can also duplicate. So that leads to some nonsense.
A lot of nonsense.
Always great. Based on my research, there are some limits, or there were like... The one thing I was reading was like 50 was his limit for a while.
Yeah, I don't think that's true anymore.
But then that got broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if his dupes get hurt, that pain doesn't pass back to him. Or I'm sorry, the pain does, the damage doesn't.
Yes.
If the duplicates learn things or have memories, when they're reabsorbed, he gets all that.
And when they die, even if he's not there to reabsorb them, he gets them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which means that he feels his death millions of times.
Oof.
Yeah. So that's part of it for sure. I have one more rule, which is a deep dive on a story about Multiple Man.
All right. Well, go right into it.
A horrendous rule.
Actually, you know what? Hold on to it, because I do want to tell the story of how he was created.
Let's do that first.
So first, he was created by Len Wein, and he was supposed to be named Xerox.
That's funny, but I'm so glad they didn't.
Zerrox.
Oh, God, that would have been terrible.
Roy Thomas, the editor-in-chief at the time, was like, are you kidding me?
We're going to get sued.
So he came up with Madrox because he thought that sounded more like an action word. So giant-sized Fantastic Four #4, he shows up. But it's weird because he shows up with like this aura around him, and he's in his old suit, which is like got the cap on him and all the circles.
Yeah, you know why he wears the old suit, right?
And this is why.
Yeah,
they do say it in his first issue.
Oh wow, they do. Okay.
So he's had this power since birth. His dad was a scientist who made him this suit. So basically, it would absorb the kinetic energy so that he wouldn't accidentally duplicate a bunch. He basically becomes sort of a bad guy. Not a bad guy, like an unwitting bad guy that the Fantastic Four have to fight. But he's basically looking for help. But he's giving off like almost like an EMP pulse. He's like shutting down New York City as he's walking through it. In typical superhero fashion, they fight him, misunderstanding, and finally they're like, okay, we'll get you some help.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's a villain in the movie... most of the time is not the case.
No, not usually. He's gray a lot, but not villainous.
Not full,
really.
like, yeah. In this, he's just like, yeah, man, I got caught robbing a bunch of banks. That's what they said in the movie.
There can be dupes that are villainous.
Absolutely.
But Madrox Prime tends to not be.
Yeah. He's just a complicated man.
Yeah, very. Yeah, the suit, he's wearing because he can't control his powers, right? And so, like, if people knock into him, it creates dupe even if he doesn't want to. So that's why he has the suit. Eventually, he can learn to control it, and then he doesn't need to wear the suit anymore, which is where you see him in his more classic outfit, which is like the trench coat and like the green dotted like
t-shirt.
Yeah. Which are reminiscent of the suit, but
like one of the things I was reading was saying that those circles still have some sort of absorption power in them, so he has more control, but once again, I haven't read all of his issues to know.
It's not usually a thing in the later stuff.
No,
like,
not at all.
But
he's always wearing something
is.
like that, something with the circles. So there could be some validity to it. But
For sure.
man, I'm not. If you don't give me a citation, I can't look for that. I don't have time to be looking for that.
I don't know. I haven't read that literally, or I don't remember reading that literally. Right. So not a huge.
It's probably a throwaway line at best.
Yeah.
So what's his last power?
Okay, this is really horrendous, and we're kind of going out of order of time, but this is really sad. So I keep saying the second run of Peter David.
So there's 2 Peter David runs.
Yes.
One's from the 90s.
Yes.
He is not the focus.
It's Havoc's for X Factor team.
Yes.
And then later in the X Factor and X Factor Investigations, that is when Peter David's second run, and that's when Jamie Madrox is running X Factor.
That's around this time.
It is.
It's early 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Early to mid 2000s.
And it's more of it wants to be more of a noir. Like it wants to be a detective.
They're solving mysteries and kind of getting
He even calls it
up.
out a bunch too. Like he likes the noir feel of things.
Absolutely. And he's in both of them, but he's mostly a minor character in the first one, and he's
so a
major.
Lot we're going to talk about the second one.
It's going to be about the second run for sure, and it's also that's like my favorite run. I really like this run. Unfortunately, a lot of this run is not on Marvel Unlimited.
Tragic.
It is. It's really sad. I'm devastated about it. Anyway, and then there was like some versions of like the big collections that didn't get printed. Like they didn't finish printing them. It's hard to find for some of it, but it's good. It is more adult for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not a Marvel Knights, though there is one.
There's a Marvel Knights mini called Madrox that I read.
Which is, but this isn't, but it's definitely older. It reads older. And so here's an example of one of his final powers. So this is during the time where he has his dupes and they all have kind of different personalities and there's supposed to be different facets of him. He doesn't have a ton of control over them and they're very rebellious. They don't necessarily always like Maddox Prime. During this period of time, he sleeps with 2 of his members on his team. That is Monet, and the other is Terry, who's Siren, so Banshee's daughter,
yeah. On
the same night.
Ooh.
Because he sleeps with one of them and a dupe sleeps with the other one. He doesn't realize that's happening. It's not on purpose, but it happens. He reabsorbs a dupe, whatever. Long story short, we come to find out, he thinks he slept with Siren, his dupe slept with Monet. Siren gets pregnant. She has a baby. His name is Sean Madrox. She proposes to him, whatever. When Jamie came to see her bedside to see the birth of his child, he picks up his son, Sean Madrox, and he absorbs him. Because it was not him who slept with Siren. It was a clone, and children of his dupes are dupes.
Are read as dupes.
And so they are absorbed immediately.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah,
that's real rough.
So like, let me be very clear about Jamie Madrox and his powers it's horrible. It's really one of the most brutal, sad. Siren breaks his finger, kicks him out of the room. They they spiral into very deep depressions after this.
So I started reading that X Factor run, the second one, and I didn't really know too much about the personalities. I did a little bit, but I didn't know how deep it went.
Yeah.
So, it starts with Richter. This is post House of M in Decimation, they call it, the
Correct.
Decimation era.
Yeah.
Richter has no powers, and he is on X Factor.
Yes.
He's on X Factor Investigations. And he's trying to jump off a building. Mm-hmm. So, Jamie's on another building, and he makes 3 dupes, and he goes, how are you going to go about fixing this? And so they all give their pitch. And the one's like, real gung-ho, happy-go-lucky. And he's like, you're the one. So he gets sent over. He talks to Richter and eventually pushes Richter off the building.
Yes.
Because he's the deceitful one and just straight lied to Madrox.
Yeah.
Just straight lied to him. Richter's fine. Monet grabs him in midair. But
yes,
that was the first point. You're like, oh, this is why he can't just duplicate a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And just solve every problem with duplication. So every time he duplicates, not every time, most of the time he duplicates in this era of runs with Peter David specifically writing him, it is always with hesitation and investigating the dupes that come out.
Yeah. They also play it for laughs sometimes.
Yes.
It is not always, it's not a totally heavy book.
No,
there's a lot
humor.
of comedy in here. But there is a scene when he confesses to Monet and Siren about what happened, that she takes him and she starts throwing him up against the wall and trying to force out the dupe that slept with her. And he's like, I don't know, like I don't have any control over it. She's like banging him on the wall. She's like, I guess we'll just keep going until we find him. And like a bunch of them pop out, and like one is like really afraid and timid, and another one comes up and he's like, violence is not the answer. And she's just like beating Madrox in the wall. And it's really funny, but it's a good example of like he doesn't really have a ton of control.
No.
Like they all have kind of independent personalities. And you know, he also did this on purpose. So before he starts feeling like his dupes are getting out of his control, one of the first things he did after the Professor X thing was make a bunch of dupes and send them out into the world.
This is amazing because this goes hand in hand with the powers of being able to absorb the memories and the experiences of his dupes.
You're right. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, he also can duplicate anything he's holding.
Yes.
So if he's holding a gun, all the dupes have guns too.
Yeah.
They don't, that's why it's not just biological duplication. It's something really weird is going on with Jamie Madrox's
It is
powers.
a Xerox.
It's crazy. Anyway, so Xerox.
I think this is also like right in the beginning of that X Factor run, that like a monk comes in and it's him.
Yeah.
And he has been studying with monks for years. And he goes, all right, we're going to reabsorb. That's how it goes. They do say in this run that when he absorbs someone like this with a lot of memories, he'll be sort of out of commission for a while as he's absorbing all the information.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I like logical limitations with that's why sometimes I don't like magic books, because it feels like magic is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I like magic books if they have like logical
rules.
Yeah, like it's some limitations to it is all I need.
Those are two different categories of fiction.
Right.
Magic with rules and magic without rules.
I like magic with rules.
Interesting. There is a couple other important Madrox clones that he'd sent out and he kind of reconnects with. One is a Olympic gymnast.
Mm-hmm.
One is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., a full
awesome
agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And in one of the issues, he walks into S.H.I.E.L.D. because he's trying to like reabsorb him, like, and
he has to be somewhat close to them.
Yes,
that's the other thing. He can't just like at a whim absorb them.
Yes, he has to be there.
Yeah, with some it's like he has to be touching them, but then there's something a little later that's basically there's a little bit of a range.
He can do a little range. Yeah,
he doesn't have to be right up next to him.
Yeah,
I do love some of the art though, where there's like two of them next to each other and you can just see him with like one finger pushing him like back and absorbing.
Yeah.
Like some of the art's a little playful with like how they reabsorb.
Because he originally was a pretty playful character. I mean, he has in some serious plots, but generally like pretty playful guy. At least at the beginning. And then they broke
him a bit.
In the 90s for sure. And we'll talk about that. He goes back to reabsorb him and like gets caught immediately because they have like some sort of like under the skin thing for that clone in particular, because they only trust him and they know that there's Jamie Madrox is out there. But yeah, he ends up reabsorbing him anyway. But
he becomes a lawyer.
Yes.
So he had a dupe go out and learn and like go to law school and get like pass the bar, because once he passes the bar and he reabsorbs them, he just is that person now.
Yeah.
Brilliant loophole.
He also has a guy who became a detective. Like,
yeah. He has a private eye license or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm. There's one final clone who changed his name. So we have a John Maddox
instead of Jamie Madrox.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And
that's not confusing with Artie Maddox.
He becomes no worries about it. He becomes a preacher, and he has a congregation.
Okay.
And he has a family.
Okay.
With a wife. He is giving, the scene starts with he's giving a homily, and Jamie opens the back door of the church, and he like kind of freezes, says he's getting sick. He runs out. Jamie leaves the church, and he's like got another runner, but he can sense when the clones are when the dupes are nearby.
Uh-huh.
And so he's just kind of walking, strolling, because he knows that there's no way this guy can get away from him. Not really. His wife runs into Jamie the Prime. He goes home with the wife, kisses the wife, that's all, but like plays with his son, goes to his office and has to do a confrontation about it. And where the clone is just like, I've been living in fear my whole life, waiting for this day, because you have to understand that these clones like exist on their own.
Yeah.
And it's pretty horrifying for Jamie when they die, and he knows that feeling, but also this has changed, and this has changed through especially post Krakoa. But in these early 2000s comics by Peter David, Multiple Man, if he doesn't have all of his dupes, like his power is lessened.
Okay.
If he doesn't have them all. And also there's like an allegory of his soul being broken into pieces.
Ooh, okay.
Where he's like lost that part of himself. So it's a big deal. Like he's not just absorbing these dupes because he's a jerk and like doesn't want them to live their own lives. Like he doesn't feel whole without them. So he is in this guy's office. The guy comes in and he's like holding a gun to Jamie. And Jamie's like, what are we calling this? A murder-suicide? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are we going to do here?
If Madrox Prime dies, all the dupes will die.
Right. But the guy say, well, maybe there's a chance, blah, blah, blah. He collapses to the ground. Jamie's like, go ahead, try to pull the trigger. Like, he has no fear. It's wild. And the dupe collapses and is crying. And there's kind of a cut scene there, and Jamie's outside of the house, and you're like, oh my God, he absorbed him, like this guy, because like the guy's really worried about his family. He's like, I'm just gonna be gone and you're not gonna tell them. And he accuses Jamie, and he's totally right. He's like, you're gonna walk away like a hit and run, you're gonna make me disappear, and my family's gonna have no idea, because what are you gonna do, tell them that I'm a dupe and blah, blah, blah? You're not gonna do that. And he knows that, and Jamie knows that too. He won't do it.
That's what I like about Jamie Prime, is he wants to be a good person.
Yes.
His duplicates aren't always good people, which also makes it interesting because it always is like, there's some part of you in here.
But some of them are better people than him.
That's also true.
Yes.
He's not a perfect person, but he is trying to always be a good person.
Right.
Which kind of feels like everyone. Like, we are all trying to be his powers feel like the perfect encapsulation of how you can look at yourself.
Absolutely.
We all have multitudes. There are times we're better. There's times we're worse. There are times we're deceitful. There's times we're more honest. And imagine having that version of you talking to you.
That's gotta be
nerve-wracking.
Traumatizing, right? Like, you can't hide from yourself in a lot of ways. And Jamie there's a scene of him outside, and then you see it cuts in looking into the window, and he leaves John.
Oh, wow. Really?
He does not absorb him. He's like, this is worth the cost of a part of my soul. That's the end of that issue. And he walks away. And then you see John talking to his wife and saying, like, I feel like a burden has been lifted. Because he had been waiting. He knew that it was at some point in his life that Jamie Prime was probably going to show up and be like, it's time to go, bud. It's time for me to absorb you.
Game over.
Game over. Your life's done.
That's good.
I mean, and this is just like small. That's not even a main plot. That's not even the main story.
Like probably an issue.
It's a side part of an issue that this is going on in. And like, there's so much depth with this character here that I really enjoy.
One of the only stories that I actually read, like I said earlier in the episode, was from Messiah Complex. Like, that's when I jumped back into X-Men real hard, was during like House of M, and then more so when Messiah Complex started happening. So in Messiah Complex, this is when Hope Summers is born. The mutants are kind of on the way back. They're trying to get on the way back. They think she's the Messiah. So one of the things is the future was always fuzzy.
Yeah.
There was no clear future for mutants. Then Hope is born. There is 2 clear paths for the future. And they sort of play this as Cable's future and Bishop's future. So what they want to do is they get Madrox to go down to Forge, and they're like, hey man, he needs you. So him and a character named Layla Miller, which we won't go into.
No, too much.
But it is important to say that she is there. They're like, we need you to dupe. So he dupes himself twice. They send a dupe into each future to see which one, like, try to get more information about what is causing either future. Layla goes in with the one, and it ends up being Bishop's future, which, if you know anything about Bishop, is the bad one. Like, his future is he was basically in an internment camp with an M tattooed on his eye because he's a mutant.
Yeah.
Long story short, he learns all the information. He even gets the M tattooed on his eye. Layla does too, and she's a young kid. She's like 15.
Yeah, she's really young.
She's real young. What she doesn't know going into the future, or she does know, it's weird. Her powers are weird. She can kind of
see the future anyway.
The plan was get the information, die, information goes back to Madrox Prime. So it's kind of a tragic, interesting story of like him trying to get information, trying to keep her safe, because like he knew it was a suicide mission.
Right.
Like they were mentally implanting it as he was going away. But she actually ends up killing him once they find out the information, literally from Bishop, from a young Lucas Bishop. Adorable, but tragic, because then he's in a coma through most of this too, until that happens, and then he wakes up and he's like, here's the information. So he actually can tell them what's going on.
Yeah.
But leaves her in the future. I never actually I know she gets back somehow.
She does.
But I have not read that story yet.
They get back.
He goes and finds her.
She's back by Utopia.
Okay. That's not, I mean, it's bad, but it's not too bad. Is she an adult by the time she gets back? Okay.
Yes.
I thought
she is, because she ends up dating Jamie.
Right. She knows that.
Yeah.
As she blows him up.
She knows with a
grenade.
She knows that she's going to marry him.
Yeah.
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 It's very interesting.
She blows him up and says, because she usually says her own name in like a little spiel she does, and she calls herself Layla Madrox.
Yeah.
And then blows him up. And you're like, oh no, their story's not done.
Yeah. Adorable.
It's great.
So good. Layla Miller is definitely really tied with Jamie. Some other people who are tied with Jamie, Siren, for sure.
For sure.
And my nemesis is also very entangled with X Factor and Jamie Madrox.
Who's your nemesis?
Val Cooper.
Oh. I didn't run into her, so I was like, wait, who's in it?
She is a huge part of the
which
90s
one?
run.
The 90s run? Oh, I believe that.
She is a huge part of the 90s run. Now, at this time, Jamie is just on X Factor.
Mm-hmm.
Havoc is running the team, so that's Cyclops' brother. She is effectively, they are working for her in these issues. Like, so this is the first Peter David run. They're working for the government as X Factor.
Right.
And
because the second run is X Factor Investigations.
Yes. And it sets up this really interesting trope in X Factor, which comes back in the second Peter David run too, where Val Cooper requires them all to see a psychiatrist. And there's a whole issue where each person is talking to the psychiatrist and talking about their problems. And it's so compelling. Like, you have Rain Sinclair, who is Wolfsbane, talking about like her struggles with being like part beast and part girl, and like her struggles with that. They have Polaris talking about her struggles with her eating disorder. This is when it's focused and introduced. They have talking about Quicksilver and why he's such a jerk, and him talking about like the world is in slow motion for me and it's hard to not be. They talk about Strong Guy and how he, like, his mutant powers incorporated themselves and that hurt somebody, and he just wanted to be friends with people and was like a loner. It talks about Jamie. He's in here too, about how his parents died when he was young on that farm you mentioned. Mm-hmm. He lives there alone with his dupes for years.
Yeah. Because they bring it up in the second one too, about how like he's kind of socially maladjusted because he's always been he's with himself and not with anyone else.
Yeah. And then
he's not lonely, he's with himself.
Yeah. And then Havoc talks about his jealousy of his brother.
No.
Cyclops. No, crazy. So, but here's the thing about what I wanted to talk about, because I loved this, and it comes back in the second run as well, where there's the psychiatrist, the safe psychiatrist, which we'll get to.
Awesome.
But this is also, in this 90s period, this was also the era where they were trying to play around with the concept of your powers are a reaction to what is going on and what you need.
Interesting.
So Jamie Madrox's powers are, and his loneliness, kind of utilized in this way of why he duplicates.
Okay.
And Strong Guy was like this nerdy weakling or whatever, and he's getting beat up, and then when his powers activate, he gets like the arms start blowing up and he starts getting to be really buff and he becomes Strong Guy.
Because if you've never seen Strong Guy, he is cartoonishly big.
Yes.
He looks like a cartoon character.
Yeah,
he's just like a huge, his upper body is enormous and his lower body is not as much.
Yeah.
He's a puncher.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's a little bit of that is dripped into here. And this is not the only time that they mess with Madrox too. There's points in some of Peter David's run where they talk about how he is not a mutant.
Okay.
That they were kind of trickling in this concept that he was something older than mutants, something like kind of pre-mutant.
Okay.
Something called like a changeling.
Uh-huh.
And they never really followed up on this. So this kind of dies. So like...
You know, they do a similar thing with the origin of mutants. They try doing a lot of radiation, atomic energy adjacent, like your parents were near atomic work, and that made mutants, and they kind of dropped that.
Yeah, they dropped this too. But it's interesting because basically kind of what they were trying to do is that Jamie's powers were at birth. When he gets slapped by the doctor at birth, he duplicated. And so they were trying to imply that mutants that had that kind of, that were at birth mutants are different. They're older, perhaps. They might be something called changelings. That would encompass Nightcrawler. That would encompass Selene, Apocalypse, like tons of other people too. But that ends up not really becoming a major factor. But something I noted, because they were also playing with the concept of like, oh, maybe his powers because he was lonely. So that has shifted quite a bit with him. They're using, and because I think it's so hard to not do that because his powers are so psychological that you want to find those explanations in his character.
Sometimes it feels like when the dupes come out, they're whatever he was thinking about at the time, whatever he's put forward.
Right. Yes.
While he's doing it, that's what's coming out too.
Yeah. One more thing with that, I would never pass up a chance to assassinate Val Cooper's character, and so I'm going to.
Sure.
After the whole sessions with the psychiatrist, they interview Val Cooper, and every single thing she said, the psychiatrist asked her what she thinks about each person, and everything she says about them is wrong and misreading and misunderstanding and is completely unempathetic. And the psychiatrist tells her that she's the one that needs to go through sensitivity training. This psychiatrist, who comes back later, they do another round with all the new members of X Factor when Jamie is running it. The psychiatrist is Leonard Samson.
Ah, Doc Samson.
Yes.
I was literally going to ask you, was it Doc Samson?
It is. And
he's a Hulk character.
He is. He's, what is his other, Sasquatch? Doc Sasquatch too?
No.
No?
I mean, maybe he's also become, Sasquatch is a different character.
Yeah, I think he goes by.
But if he goes by he may have turned into a Sasquatch at some point. I don't want to say, because once again, Hulk history, I don't know, but I know Doc Samson is his superhero name tends to be.
Definitely. So,
but he's usually mostly a psychiatrist and less of a smashy character.
Yeah. He also becomes a psychiatrist in the second run
too.
It's really great. It's super fun. Highly recommend. I like both of the stories. If you really want Multiple Man, though, I would go with the early 2000s X Factor because the other stuff is more
the
Havoc.
X Factor investigations run.
Yeah.
I do want to I started with his first appearance. I kind of want to do an update of like where he is nowish.
Perfect.
So he died with the the X-Men versus Inhumans. Was it IVX? Is that what they did? Inhumans versus X-Men?
Yeah, IVX.
The Terrigen Mist was killing people. He's the reason they know.
Yeah.
So they found a bunch of multiple men just dead, and one was dying, and he was just like, it's the Cloud.
Yeah.
So there is another multiple man miniseries. So there's Madrox, which happens right before X Factor investigations. And then there's Multiple Man, which happened in like 2018. Turns out there was a dupe that was on Muir Island and locked up so that he wouldn't be affected by what happened with IVX and the Terrigen Mist. This entire miniseries is a weird, delightful romp through time.
Okay.
And for the purposes of continuity, that will just say that Beast comes up with a serum to turn the dupe into Madrox Prime. And that's how we get, well, I'll just say that's how we get Madrox Prime back. Because he is back. You look in the Krakoan era, at like the Hellfire Gala, he is like the entire serving staff.
Right, yeah.
And there's like an Infinity comic where it's like him and Strong Guy go off on an adventure. Well, Strong Guy and one of the dupes go off on an adventure.
Sure.
But yeah, so he is kicking around again. So he is back. That's as far as I'll go.
We'll leave it there.
I will show you some hilarious panels from that miniseries, but I would recommend it. It's like 5 issues, and it's goofy.
I'm ready. I'm gonna read it as soon as you
But it has to do with the personalities and the different aspects of the personality and everything. So
once again, something you can blame Professor X for.
Right? And we went way long.
Super long.
And we only talked about Multiple Man.
Love him, though. We're never going to get another chance. We had to fit it in.
This is true. I mean, he's only in this movie.
Yeah, so I had to squeeze as much as possible. Anyway, so thank you for listening. This is Stasia.
This is producer James.
And we'll see you for the next 10.